Yo, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today we're going to be reviewing Deryni Checkmate by Katherine Kurtz. This is book number 2 in her original Deryni trilogy, starting with Deryni Rising, which I've reviewed on the channel previously. If you want to see that review, just type in my last name and Deryni Rising or Katherine Kurtz. The review will come right up. This is book number 2. Book number 3, Hi Deryni. We'll read and review that eventually. And then I've got all these other Katherine Kurtz books too, that we will eventually read and review. Let's say I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 total Katherine Kurtz books, and we'll end up reading and reviewing all of them for the channel. Let's talk about the cover first. All 3 covers, in fact, most of the Katherine Kurtz novels were illustrated by none other than Darrell K. Sweet. Now, you might recognize that name because Darrell K. Sweet did the original Robert Jordan Wheel of Time covers. He also did these. Now, I love these covers because they just take us back to that 1980s. Actually, these came out in the 70s, so really the 1970s. We've got this great cover here painted by Darrell Sweet with the scroll work that he did on the sides. And it looks great on the backside too. Just wonderfully packaged books. They all look like they belong in the same trilogy when you put them together. So back in the day, I just love the old graphic design and covers. I mean, 1972. Let's think about this. These books came out in the early 1970s. Katherine Kurtz is literally one of the grand masters of fantasy. In 1972, what did we have? Lord of the Rings? That was about it. We had some Conan books. We had some Fritz Leiber, Fafard and the Grey Mouser books. We had, we had Edgar Rice Burroughs and the Mars books. We had a few Elric books. I mean, you could probably count on 2 hands the amount of fantasy series there were in 1972. And Katherine Kurtz was one of them, with these Deryni books. And they were wildly popular back then because of that. And she's still alive today. Imagine that. I mean, one of the grand masters of fantasy. In fact, a lot of these people are still alive, like Michael Moorcock and Katherine Kurtz. And they were the forebearers of everything, all the fantasy that we have today. It just blows my mind. Not only that, but I consider Katherine Kurtz a friend of mine. This is a letter that she wrote me when I was in college. I met her in college at an art exhibit where some of my Magic the Gathering and Dungeons of the Dragons paintings were hanging. And she took a liking to my paintings, and we just became friends, and we've corresponded ever since. And in fact, she's actually signed quite a few of my novels. She signed quite a few of my novels. In fact, she might have signed all of them. I don't know. To double check. But I always keep this letter that she wrote me as a bookmark in whatever book I'm reading at the time that is hers. Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about the book itself. Old classic fantasy. It's great. It's written spectacularly. If you are a writer and you want to learn how to write fantasy novels, and you want to learn what kind of words to use and how your characters should speak and how you should describe things, study the way Katherine Kurtz does it, because she has a real way of sticking a medieval flair into her writing that is just so gorgeous. The prose is so gorgeous in these. And not a lot of people do that. I really tried to emulate a lot of what she did in my own books. I probably didn't do it as well as she did, but I gave it a shot because I could tell this lady knew what she was doing. So in book number 1, which I reviewed, It's about young King Kelson. His father passes away and he has to take over the leadership of the realm. Now there's these priests that by the order of Melchizedek, and they are sort of the real rulers of the land. Sort of the religion rules the land over the kingship. And the religion really does not like magic. They don't like pagan magic. They don't like witchcraft. In fact, the witchcraft and pagan magic is called Deryni magic. That's what it's called. And the high priests of the order of Melchizedek, they want to shut this shit down at every turn. Well, King Kelson, the young King Kelson, as a young boy, takes over the kingship from his dead father, and two of his aides, Morgan and Duncan, are accused of teaching young King Kelson to use his sort of secret magic, his sort of the magic that is banned from the land. Well, now King Kelson's using it. In fact, in book 1, he uses it in a grand, spectacular fashion where everybody can see it's out in the open. And now people are like, now the priests of Melchizedek are like, oh, can't have this. So now they're on a witch hunt. Now they're on a purge of all the Deryni. They want to get rid of all the pagan witchcraft magic users in the land, starting with Morgan and Duncan. And they are guilty of teaching. I mean, it's not like they're denying the fact that they taught young King Kelson how to use the magic. Then in this book, they're all being hunted, including Kelson. King Kelson has to watch his back too, even though he's king. He's got a lot of people coming for him because they know he's a magic user. Now, this book, whereas book 1 was more about King Kelson himself, this book is more about Morgan, Duncan, and their friend Derry, who are all sort of Deryni magic users on the run, trying to save their king from being assassinated. This is basically the plot of this whole thing. At one point, Morgan even runs into he's questioned by a mysterious stranger about his use of the Deryni magic, and if he can really call himself a priest anymore. There's another thing I didn't mention is Morgan and Duncan were both priests of Melchizedek. So they're kind of like, what do you call those guys? The priests that go rogue. Because they were part of the order. And now they're starting to use the magic that is, not allowed. And now they're just sort of like, they're not really like apostates, but they're the word is on the tip of my tongue, and I will think of it later and be pissed off. They're priests that aren't being priestly. Anyway, I know there's a word for that. Please drop the note line and when religious figures don't just go bad, but they actively fight against the church that they're supposed to be a part of. What the fuck is that called? I know there's a word for it. Oh, I'm gonna just tear my library up right now. I'm just getting spun up. Anyway, Morgan, Duncan, and Derry, they're the three main characters in this book. King Kelson, the main character in book 1, sort of takes a back seat to these guys. And we get to go see Derry, who was one of my favorite. He's more of like the spy master. He's kind of like the guy that they send off into enemy territory to gain knowledge, to look through ancient books and see, he's kind of like the most sneaky, crafty, sort of an assassin-like guy. And he gets into some adventures out here that I read these when I was a kid, and I loved them. I mean, Derry was my favorite character in the whole series, just because he was sort of the go-get-shit-done guy, whereas Morgan and Duncan were kind of like, we'll argue the politics of everything with people, and we'll send Derry out on the secret missions. But that's kind of the basis of all this. I don't know if I did a really good job. But this is book 2, a little bit more about Duncan, Morgan, and Derry than King Kelson. And then in book 3, I think we get back to all 4 of them a little bit more together. Like this book 1 is more about King Kelson himself. Anyway, I give Deryni Checkmate, book number 2 of the trilogy, a solid 9.5 out of 10, maybe 9.75 out of 10. Just like I said, Katherine Kurtz is one of the grand masters of fantasy. one of the people that started the genre off. If you're not reading her, you're missing a great point in fantasy history.